Hi, I'm the Gardener Ben and welcome along to the North Lodge Cottage Garden, where it's now late May. My inbox is filling up with the same questions being asked over and over again, so I thought I'd film you a small video just the same as I did last year at this time of year to breach a few of the questions that are being asked repeatedly. There's never a silly question. I will answer as many inbox messages as I receive as possible, but lots of you are asking the same thing, and it's all about Blackspot. We've obviously touched this year already on my opinions on controlling pests in the garden and how they should be left alone as a cornerstone of any garden ecosystem. But Blackspot is slightly different, and as you can see, this particular rose has Blackspot quite badly. It is black blemishes that appear all over the leaves. Eventually the leaves like this one will turn yellow and a lot of these will fall off and fall to the ground. And you can see another example just here. Now, if your roses in the garden are actually showing signs of this, the best thing to do is go over them and actually pick these leaves off. Remove them completely, even if it means taking and completely defoliating the plant. Remove these leaves and actually take them away. These need to either be incinerated or taken for commercial recycling, where they'll reach a proper temperature to actually cleanse the bacteria and wipe the bacteria out. But these certainly shouldn't be left to fall on the ground around the plants, and they shouldn't be put into your domestic compost bin. So these need to be removed and taken away. But with Blackspot, the best thing to do is completely avoid it. Much like human beings, plants need to avoid stress wherever possible, and it's up to you as the gardener to look after your plants and make sure they avoid all the stress they can, and that normally involves responding to the weather conditions. Back in the winter, I spoke to you repeatedly an awful lot about proper pruning techniques with your roses, and how you should always form a large open goblet shape in the middle of the plant, removing any internal stems or crossing wood to open up the shape of the plant to create an open bowl or chalice shaped plant. And we do this by selecting outward facing buds, and we do this for a really important reason. Outward growing plants have lots of light and air and space in the center, allowing airflow, sunlight into the center, which will alleviate a lot of mould, mildew and black spot problems. Blackspot, however, is one of those things that raises its head at the same sort of time each year, and it's normally because of bare root plants that are under stress, having recently been planted, which simply don't have the root structures to actually keep up with the amount of growth that the plant is putting on. You'll also see it in mature plants as they enter their first flush of blooms, pushing lots and lots of growth and buds through. And if you're not keeping up with your watering, or you haven't really deeply mulched, you are going to have problems with Blackspot at this time of year. So do keep your eye out for it, and for the first signs, you need to then start thinking about upping your watering. Now, I did this last year and I can't talk to you enough about this. Mulching is one of the key things you can do across the garden. It has so many benefits. My gardening technique is very basic. Good watering, good husbandry, good practices and good mulching, and all of those things will help you to form a very successful garden indeed. Mulch can take the form of anything that you like, whether it's good quality garden compost you're producing in your compost bin at home, whether it's a fully organic composted product like Eco Sustainable Solutions Eco Mix, which I endorse here in the garden, or whether you're using things like bark nuggets, well-rotted horse manure or leaf mulch. You really must make sure you're mulching your beds and borders every single year, and that includes also pot-grown plants to a depth of at least 4 inches or 100 millimeters across all of the soil exposed to sunlight. This is going to seal in moisture, feed and actually nourish the plant itself and suppress weeds. So it's a plus as far as I'm concerned. It's a job that's done normally in the depth of the winter, making the garden look really nice and tidy, but it's a job that you really shouldn't skip. So please do make sure that you're mulching, and it's never too late to do that. Just because you've missed the winter season doesn't mean if you've got space in your beds and borders and you can actually get in between your plants, you should actually get out there wherever possible and apply a mulch. I say it can take any form that you like, as long as it gets done. It doesn't really matter. All of the organic compost and bark, wood chips are going to have the same effect over different periods of time. Organic compost, for instance, in Eco Sustainable Solutions, I say is like caffeine to your plants. The nutrition available is instant to your plants and goes straight down into the soil where they can use it over a 12-month period. If you choose to use something like bark nuggets with a longer shelf life that's going to take longer to decompose, you're going to be looking at between 3 and 4 years for those nutritional values to be added to the soil. But anything you can do to seal in moisture, suppress the weeds, is going to be beneficial for your plants. The other thing you can do is, like me, is install an irrigation system. watering your plants like this, we did this last year, but watering your plants like this is really, really ineffective. You might feel like you're out gardening and it's lovely to have the sun on the back of your neck, warming your soul and thinking, oh, this is really lovely. But doing this to your plants is really, really not very good for them at all. And you might be surprised just how long you have to stand there and do something like this for it to actually be effective. When I first started my career, I actually worked in a plant nursery from the age of 14, and the lady I worked for, one of my jobs was to commercially water on a pressurized watering system with a professional lance. The amount of water that would come out of one of these was amazing, and I was a tiny little waif of a thing at the time. But she would go behind me and knock out the 2 or 3 litre plants that I'd been watering and turn them upside down. And if the water hadn't reached all the way down to the very, very bottom of the pot, she'd ask me to water them all over again. So I did learn proper watering techniques very, very early on. And if I can encourage you to do anything else, please don't go out into the garden and do this with your hose at any point whatsoever. Most of what you're going to be watering onto the soil whilst you do this is going to evaporate straight back off, and it's utterly useless. So it's a complete waste of resources, a complete waste of time. An irrigation system that applies water to the very, very top of the soil, very, very controlled in a drip form. I use an irrigation system from Rainbird. They have pressurized valves in them. You lay the pipe out across the soil, plug it into the hose or a pump system as I have here, and basically it applies water at a very, very controlled rate to the soil. And I normally water overnight from large tanks in the garden, or when I do run dry, we're using the actual mains pressure itself as well. But by doing that, we're using much less water and applying it to exactly where the plant needs it, actually on the soil. On that note, a newly planted rose is going to need an awful lot of water, and I've been talking to this an awful lot over the last couple of weeks to people messaging me. Please feel free to send me messages, but if you want to know more about this, continue to watch, because you might be really shocked by how long it takes to fill something like this up. A newly planted bare root rose that was planted between September, October last year and the end of March this year is going to need somewhere between 14 and 20 litres of water once or twice a week for the rest of the year. Even mature specimen plants that have been planted for over a year are still going to need help during long periods of dry weather, and they're going to need at least 10 or 12 litres of water. This beautiful thing is by Hawes. This is the watering can they sent me several weeks ago, and it's an absolute stunner. But this is a 2-gallon or 10-litre watering can. So we're talking about 1.5 or 2 of these once or twice a week. And just to show you how ineffective watering your garden like this is, what I'm going to do is, while I'm continuing to talk to you, I'm going to actually set my hose, I'm going to lock it in position, I'm going to pop that into the watering can. And I'm going to time myself of how long it takes to fill up 10 litres of water. The count was 52 seconds when it last rolled, at 8 minutes and 52. So I think you might be really quite shocked by how much water you need to apply. Spraying water over the leaves of the plants is really not going to do them any good at all. It's going to trap damp, cold air around the plant and cause mould and mildew problems. If you're watering like it is right now and it's very, very hot, a lot of the water you're watering onto the plant is not only going to evaporate, but you're also looking at scorching your plants as well. If you have plants in bud and you're getting those buds wet by spraying water over them, you in turn are going to cause your plants to ball, and that's where the outer petals stick together and then the bud fails to actually open. I can hear this watering can starting to fill up now, and we're very, very nearly there. Very nearly. Wait for it. There we go. That took around 1 minute and 20 seconds to fill up 10 litres of water. Therefore, if I'm stood there with the hose spraying water like this, I've got to stand there for around 1 minute and say 1 minute 10, 1 minute 20, like this on every single plant. I don't think a lot of you are actually watering your plants particularly successfully. So by filling up a watering can, I'll fill up a 2-gallon can now and we'll time that one and we'll see how long that takes. That's a 2.5-gallon one behind me, a vintage one. You might be really quite shocked by how long it takes to water and fill something like this, which is 2 gallons. And we're talking about 1.5 to 2 of these twice a week, all the way through the warm periods, even if it rains. And a lot of people and a lot of my customers say, oh, I haven't watered because it rained. Unless we get a really, really good downpour, and by downpour I mean at least 6 to 8 millimeters of rain forecast, you really want to be continuing watering at all times. And by watering properly at the base of the plant, around the root zone, straight onto the soil with a watering can, your focus watering is actually going to alleviate a lot of the problems caused by getting the leaves wet. Another problem I'm also getting asked an awful lot, and a lot of people messaging me, especially as my account is reaching more and more people, they're concerned by other pest and disease problems in the garden, especially as we enter the very beginning of June. I'm getting lots of messages on the subject. When your rows, oh, there we go, that's the 2.5 gallon one filled up. Again, another 1 minute and 30 seconds on the timer to fill that watering can up. And we're talking about applying one of these at least once or twice a week to the plants. Now, if you're growing in pots, you're also going to need to make sure that you place a large saucer underneath the plant. Now, during the winter, I advise you to remove those so your plant is not sat in stagnant water during the winter, and your terracotta pots have got the most chance of not cracking and splitting out during cold weather, where as dry as possible. But at this time of year, you want to be popping those saucers back underneath the pots to catch as much water as possible, and you need to make sure that you've got a nice open space at the top of the pot, allowing at least 3 or 4 inches of water to reservoir up into the top of the pot and soak all the way down. Roses are notoriously deep-rooted plants, which means they can access lots and lots of water right out of the sun's reach, but it does mean when it comes to being dry, you've got to get that water right down into the root systems. Sorry, another one of the things that I'm being asked about is flowers that look like this. This one is actually off of Crown Princess Margarita, and if you've got strange deformed flowers at the very beginning of the season, I'm going to ask you just to hold your ground and not to panic. If you are worried, obviously you can send me a picture. I'm more than happy to have a look at it for you. But as the hormone levels of the plant rage forward, as the first flush of blooms, normally for around the 1st or 2nd week of June, come through, you're going to get some of the flowers look like this. This one is all a bit distorted and a little bit strange looking. It's not quite right. These should just be snipped off and discarded, and you shouldn't pay them any mind, and you shouldn't worry about them at all. Plants like Crown Princess Margarita and Port Sunlight produce lots of these very early on in the season. All you need to do is say snip them off, be confident for a week or two, let the hormone levels really rage forward, and I promise you most of you are going to get an absolutely stunning show of flowers. Once again, if you have any questions or queries, or if you want to bring up any points brought up in today's video, don't hesitate to contact me. But if you've got Blackspot, the easiest way of dealing with it is proper pruning, proper mulching, and proper watering. And if you're experiencing flowers that are looking like this at the very beginning of the season, it's just normally the change of hormones. But if you're concerned, you can always send me an inbox with a couple of pictures. I'll hopefully see you all again soon. Take care now. Bye bye.